This sucks.
I don't know how to start this video. Recently, I've been thinking a lot about Persona 1. I think it's a cool game and all, right? Good story, good characters, yada yada yada. But I wasn't really thinking about the game itself necessarily. I mean, I clearly was, but I was more thinking about the amount of aura it has. Honestly, my favorite part about the game is definitely its style. It's not as stylistically intense as something like Persona 5, but the game has this really cool vibe to it. Like, it's got this kind of grungy, rugged aesthetic that you don't really see in other games in the series. Like, not even in Persona 2. I always wished Atlus, like, explored more of that atmosphere and the style that they captured with Persona 1. Then I thought, what if Atlus actually did make more content for Persona 1? Turns out they did. They actually made a lot. I don't know how many people knew about this, but Persona 1 has like a lot of content relating to it that isn't just like, you know, the game. Now, you might be asking, well, what Persona 1 content did Atlus make? And to answer that, I implore you to join me on this wild journey as I look through every single, why would I say that? I just want to look at every single piece of Persona 1 related media that Atlus released as of right now. But before we can get to all the side content, we got to start with the meat and potatoes of it all. That being the game itself. Persona 1 is a game with many masks, or should I say personas, or should I, there's a lot of versions of Persona 1. Starting with the original, Megami Ibunroku Persona, which is the first release of the game and is the de facto first game in the franchise. You could say that SMTF is the first Persona game, but like not really, and if you say that, I know what you are. Anyways, Megami Ibunroku Persona, also known as Revelation Persona in the West, was released for the PlayStation 1 on September 20th, 1996 in Japan, and on December 14th of that same year in North America. Sorry if I say the name of the game weird, I'm kind of congested right now. There's a few notable differences between the two versions of the game, but I'll get into that later. In the game, you follow the protagonist, commonly known as Naoya Todo, or Naurin for short, along with a few of his classmates from St. Hermelin High School in the town of Bikagecho. Yukino Miyazumi, aka Yuki, Masao Inaba, aka Mark, Eriko Kirishima, aka Eri, it's Eri in the PS1 release, okay? Hidehiko Uesugi, aka Brown, Kei Nanjo, aka nothing, Yuka Ayase, and Reiji Kido, as they go about their daily lives as high schoolers with no problems ever arising. I lied. One day, Brown convinces the group to all play this game called Persona. No, not the game I'm talking about right now. It's basically one of those ritual games you play as a kid, like Bloody Mary or Charlie Charlie or whatever. Usually when someone asks to do stuff like that in high school, everyone says no and then they get beat up, but luckily for Brown, he's friends with like 7 of the dumbest people on earth. They end up playing the game and it actually works. Everyone goes unconscious and wakes up in this strange alternate dimension. There they meet this weirdo with a mask named Philemon who explains what a persona is and then gives them the ability to summon and command their own personas. After that whole situation, the group goes to the hospital to meet with their friend Maki, who's like bedridden or something. During that visit, they find out that the city was overrun by evil demons that want to kill you, and Maki's mom knows exactly who's responsible for it. The president of the SEBEC company and her boss, Takehisa Kandori, or Kandori or whatever. The group heads back to the school because for some reason it's the only safe place in town, and at this point, the game branches off into 2 different storylines. The first is the main route, the SEBEC route, where the party goes out to find Kandori, figure out what's going on, and put an end to all the bullshit he apparently caused. The second is the Snow Queen quest, which is an alternate storyline, where the party instead investigates a bunch of incidents that happened at the school 8 years prior to the events of the game. Now, I'm not sure what those events have to do with what's going on in the story right now, but go off, I guess. Like I said before, the SEBEC route is like the main canon path that the story takes, while the Snow Queen quest is just a cool optional story that also happens to have the best music in the game. Speaking of music, I think this is like the perfect time to start talking about the differences between the versions of Persona 1. Well, music isn't important just yet, but you'll get what I'm saying in a sec. Revelations Persona. You guys remember when I talked about that before? Yeah, it's back now. Just to reiterate, Revelation Persona is the North American release of Megami Ibunroku Persona, which is the PS1 version of Persona 1. The biggest, most major difference between the 2 versions of the game is that the visuals have changed a lot. All the characters are different. The localization team tried to make the game more appealing to Western audiences by changing some of the designs, but in doing that, they inadvertently created these creatures. They even changed the names of the characters too. Like Eriko was changed to Ellen, Maki's changed to Mary, Yukino is still Yuki, just spelt differently, Brown is changed to Brad, Yuka is changed to Alana, Reiji is changed to Chris, Mark is still Mark, and Kei Nanjo is changed to Nate Trinity. Mark is a weird case though, cause like he has 3 different names. In Megami Ibunroku Persona, Masao Inaba is his real name, right? But he has the nickname Mark. But in Revelations Persona, his real name is Mark and his nickname is Massey. I don't know where they got Massey from. They also changed some of the names for certain skills, items, and demons in the game. I guess they also changed some of the Persona names, but like the same thing basically. They even changed the name of the town that the game takes place in, from Mikagecho to Lunar Vale, which is actually a pretty raw name all things considered. Aside from all the name and design changes though, the game is pretty much the same and there aren't really any major differences between Megami Ibunroku Persona and Revelations Persona. Oh yeah, except for the fact that Revelations Persona doesn't have the Snow Queen quest. Yeah, so the localization team didn't have enough time to fully translate the Snow Queen quest before the release of Revelations Persona, so it's kind of just not in the game. I mean, it's still fully playable, but the text is all jumbled up so you literally can't read it. If you had any intention of actually knowing the story while playing the game, good luck with that. Okay, that's actually all the major changes between Megami Ibunroku Persona and Revelation Persona, like for real this time. There's smaller stuff like certain things around the map being changed from Japanese to English, but I feel like that's so small that it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of anything. But I mean, if you want to know every single small detail that's changed between the two, go ahead and look it up on the wiki, I guess. But the differences I will talk about are the differences in Shin Megami Tensei Persona. Shin Megami Tensei Persona was released on April 29th, 2009 in Japan, and September 22nd, 2009 in North America. It's a PSP remaster of the original Persona 1, so from now on, I'm just going to call it Persona 1 PSP. Persona 1 PSP is actually pretty faithful to the original Japanese release of the game, which means that yes, the names of everything and the designs are no longer changed, thank God. There are some notable differences and additions in the PSP version though. There's a whole new menu, a new difficulty mode, some new optional content for both of the bonus dungeons in the game. There's some quality of life changes like changing the aspect ratio of the game and redoing all the cutscenes to make them higher quality. There's some new skills and some changes to some old skills. And there's even a whole new opening and soundtrack that, I'm not gonna lie, I think they're just worse in the PS1 version. With all that being said, it's pretty clear that this is the best version of the game. Like, the other two are still playable, but this version is definitely the most streamlined version of Persona 1, and it also has the most content. And even if you're not a fan of the PSP soundtrack, there is a way to get the old soundtrack in the game. I played the game like that personally, but you just got to look it up on YouTube. You'll find it. I'll probably put it in the description. That's kind of it for the different versions of Persona 1. Every other release of Persona 1 is just a re-release of one of these versions, and it's probably not this one. Since we're done talking about the main game though, I can finally start to talk about the other Persona 1 stuff that isn't as well known, but is still just as interesting. To me at least, I don't know about you. Since we just talked about the main game, I think that's a perfect transition to talk about the spin-off games. Yeah, so Persona 1 doesn't have any spin-off games. Just kidding, I lied, there actually are some. Persona 1 and 2 are like famously underutilized in the series compared to the more modern Persona games. Like, fans have been asking for remakes and modern re-releases of these three games for years, and the most we've ever gotten in regards to them was like new art of the protagonist every few years. So one would assume that they would have literally zero spin-offs because Atlus seems to just not care about them, but there actually are some Persona 1 spin-offs. I actually want to start this section off with Megami Ibunroku Persona Digital Collection. At first glance at the name, you might think this is like some sort of Persona 1 Digital Deluxe Edition type of thing, but that's not entirely true. The Persona Digital Collection was released for the PC in 1998 and is this big collection of a bunch of things from Persona 1, like movies, wallpaper, sounds from the game, screensavers, music, and even a calendar of all things. The game also came with a 47-page book packaged inside the box called the Persona World Book that includes a bunch of stuff like some interviews with the developers of the game, some stickers, and even some posters. But the main focus of the collection, and the reason why I have it in this games list, is the minigames. There are like 12 minigames featuring the characters from Persona 1 that all take place after the events of the game. The minigames are pretty short and simple, but there really isn't a lot of footage that you can find of them easily online, so it's kind of difficult for me to show them off. I don't know, maybe if I went to the 17th Google search page and looked at the middle row, I would find it, but I don't know, I didn't see anything. I did find a YouTube playlist with all the movies that I'm going to link in the description, but fair warning, these are some of the most epilepsy-inducing, psychosis-ridden videos I've ever seen in my life. Watching them genuinely feels like a fever dream, so please watch them at your own risk, alright? If you can handle that stuff though, I highly recommend checking them out because they're actually really cool, but the people working at Atlus were clearly on something while making them. That aside, there really isn't much else to the Megami Ibunroku Persona Digital Collection. Owning the actual Persona 1 soundtrack is like really cool. I do love that soundtrack dearly. I mean, you can also just buy the soundtrack, but it's still pretty cool being able to own that and some other stuff that you just can't buy standalone. I wish there was more that I could show of this collection, but I'm sorry. I'm not gonna spend $190 on a website I've literally never seen before in my life. to get footage of this one game that probably isn't even compatible with my computer. Though, if I ever change my mind, expect a video dissecting that entire collection. You never know, alright? You never know. With that game aside, I'm gonna move on to the next Persona 1 spinoff. That being Megami Ibunroku Persona Iku no Touhen. That name is an absolute mouthful, so from now on, I'm just gonna call it Persona 1 Mobile. Persona 1 Mobile, originally released in December of 2006 and developed by Atlus and BBMF, is a mobile spin-off of Persona 1 that takes place around the middle of the game's SEBEC story, right after the party gets transported to the Deva system. For those who have not played Persona 1, I know that sounds like straight gibberish, my bad. It was made with the intention of people playing it on flip phones. Obviously, if the game was made now, it would run much better and probably have some microtransactions too, but luckily that's not the case. The story of this game is fairly simple too, though it is a little more in depth than the one in the digital collection. The party gets transported into the Deva system, and they're all scattered across a super long tower. The only way for them to get back to their world is to get these 9 orbs that are placed somewhere throughout the tower and reach the top of said tower. Really simple explanation, but I just wanted to give a small description about what's going on for background knowledge. The gameplay in Persona 1 Mobile is basically the same as the actual Persona 1, including things like demon negotiation and Persona fusion, but almost everything else about the game is wildly different. Weirdly enough, this game is actually a roguelike. All the floors are randomly generated, there's a safe room every 10 floors, and if you die, you lose everything you got in your run. It's kind of funny that the first Persona roguelike was a mobile game from 2006, but hey, I'll take what I can get. If this game sounds interesting to you in any way, first of all, go play Persona 1. But if you've already played Persona 1 and you're still interested, you're actually in luck, because in September of 2023, a company called Gmode released a port of Persona 1 Mobile on the Switch and on Steam as part of their Gmode Archive series, making this game the only playable version of Persona 1 on modern hardware. Isn't that wonderful? With that being said, we're officially done with all of the Persona 1 related games. That's right, guys. That's right, there's no more Persona 1 games, I think. Now it's time to look for something different, something nefarious, maybe something that requires literacy. We're looking at the books now. Now, I know this sounds scary, but trust me, it's actually really interesting. Persona 1 has a lot of books, right? Guidebooks, manuals, novels, even a manga that doesn't just follow the story of the game. Most of these are Japan exclusives, but the lovely Persona fandom, not you guys, have translated a few of them to English. I think the most obvious starting point for this section would be the manga, so Megami Ibunroku Persona, the manga, not the game, is the official manga adaptation of the game's story, written and drawn by Shinshu Ueda. Its serialization lasted from May of 1997 to August of 2000, and by the end it had a total of 8 chapters. It follows both the SEBEC story and the Snow Queen quest from the original game, but it still has its own unique content. One big addition is that it actually has some extra backstory and lore for the protagonist that isn't in the game, which makes the protagonist feel a lot more aligned with the other characters in the story. Fun fact, the manga is actually where the protagonist got what's publicly seen as his canon name. In the game, he's just referred to as Boy with Earring until you name him, but the manga actually dedicated the name Naoya Todo to him. The manga even had a whole new villain that's somehow related to the protagonist named Kazuya Todo, but I'm not going to spoil the surprise here. Unless you watched Trigun, then you know exactly what's going on. There was also a reprint of the manga with new cover art for each chapter that went from June 2009 to January 2010. The purpose of the reprint was to make the manga available digitally, so if you have a Kindle or something and you want to read the reprinted Persona 1 manga in Japanese, then you're in luck, pal. It's honestly a good substitute for anyone who prefers reading, or if you just don't want to deal with the absurd encounter rate of Persona 1. It gives you the entire story plus a little extra for your troubles, so that's nice. I'll have a link somewhere in the description if you want to read the translated manga. Take a nice look down there and you'll probably find it. Let's talk about novels. Persona 1 actually has a lot of novels that follow characters that aren't just part of the main group. It's interesting that there are official novels that dive into different character perspectives and lives. Like, it's not the most outlandish thing ever, but like, you don't really see most of the other games in the series do stuff like that, so it's surprising that they actually did it for Persona 1. Okay, so Megami Ibunroku Persona Shadow Maze. Shadow Maze was a novel written by Naoko Korikata and published in May of 1997 by Aspect Novels. The story covers the exact same story as Persona 1, but instead of following the main cast, it's actually from Maki's point of view, which is pretty cool if you know the actual story of the game, since yeah, there's a lot of stuff you can explore with that kind of concept, and I feel like it would be an interesting read probably. I don't know. If you think I have the ability to read books without a single picture in them, then you're dead wrong. There's a fan translation of this novel by the Twitter and Tumblr user Gabrielio. I definitely butchered that. Anyways, I suggest reading it if you care about Maki from Persona 1, I guess. Also, for some reason, the protagonist's name in this novel is Jihei Suzakuin. I don't know. There isn't really much else to say about the book since the overall story is pretty much the same, just from a different point of view. So I'll move on to the next novel, which is Megami Ibunroku Persona, Kandori's Ambition. Kandori's Ambition is quite different from Shadow Maze. It was also released in May of 1997, but it was written by Jin Nonbara and published by Victor Novels. By the way, I looked into both of these publishers and couldn't find anything about them, or at least anything that links to publishers that I did find to the Persona novels. I'm not sure if the publishing companies just fell off the face of the planet or whatever, but I just thought it would be interesting to share that. So back to the novel, right? The story is actually a prequel to the events of Persona 1. It's written from the perspective of the main villain from the SEBEC route, Takahisa Kandori. I feel like that's obvious from the title. I don't know though. It follows Kandori right after he becomes the head of the SEBEC Corporation. Wait, do I even have to say corporation after that? Whatever. During the final moments of the Deva System's creation, Kandori interacts with an otherworldly being that changes him from a man who's never been interested in company politics to a man who needs that damn Deva System finished now. I assume the reason as to why he changes so suddenly is inside the novel. Now, the reason I say assume is because even if I wanted to read it, I couldn't because it hasn't been translated to English yet. There are scans of the original Japanese release of it online, but nobody's gotten around to translating it yet, unfortunately. Meaning that this novel is an official piece of Persona 1 story that a big chunk of people literally can't experience. But I mean, if you can read Japanese and want to read a 211-page book about Kandori, then be my guest. Next is Persona Another Vision, Ashita do Jibun-e. I'm not saying all that ever again. Persona Another Vision was written on April 15th, 2001. It was written by Toru Kai and published by Studio DNA, who actually has a little bit of info about them online. I wasn't able to find much about the company itself, but I was able to find some novels they published while looking them up, which was nice. They released a Tsukihime novel. Yeah. Persona Another Vision also has like no information available about it online. The only thing I learned was that it's a novel that supposedly takes place after Persona 1 and that it follows Maki, Brown, and Reiji. I can't even fact check if this information is true or anything. Literally, if you search up the name of the novel on Google, you get like 3 websites with little to no information, and the rest of the results have literally nothing to do with Persona at all. Since there's so little information out there about this novel, I can't really say much else about it, but what I can say more about is Persona Snow Queen. This novel is actually connected to the Persona 1 PSP release and not the original on the PS1 like the previous 3 novels were. It was released on June 29th, 2009 and was written by Kenichi Fujiwara and published by Enterbrain. Something else that's unlike the other 3 novels is the fact that I can actually find proper information about the publisher this time. Enterbrain is a game and software publishing company with their biggest creation being a small, very niche software that not a lot of people know about called RPG Maker. Enterbrain works with a side company named Famitsu Bunko, who've published a metric shitload of light novels, Persona Snow Queen being one of them. Okay, publisher info over, back to the Persona talk. The story of this novel is just a retelling of the game's Snow Queen quest, but in novel form. Something really interesting about it though is that the game's protagonist isn't in this novel like at all. Weirdly enough, Kei Nanjo takes his place as the protagonist in this book. No clue why they made that decision, but it's something, I guess. Just like Kandori's Ambition, this book is also Japanese only, and I couldn't find any scans for it, so good luck trying to read it. I did find an eBay listing for it, but it's like $60, so yeah, no. That's all for the books of Persona 1. Wait, no, there's more. Game manuals aren't as story dense as stuff like manga and novels are. I don't know if story dense is the right word I'm looking for, but I just mean like they don't have a lot of new story and character content to look at. Instead of explaining what I mean, I'll just show you by looking at the PS1 manual for Persona 1 and dude, I can't read this shit. Luckily, there's an English manual for the PSP release of the game that's available online, so I'll show that. It just gives an overview of the story, some of the characters, and then dives into the mechanics of the game. It's good for if you don't know something like how demon negotiation works, but there's not a crazy amount of new stuff in them. But that isn't to say that there's no new stuff in them, because while manuals don't usually give any extra info, guidebooks do. Guidebooks give a lot of random fun facts and info about stuff from the games, and sometimes some info about the developers too. I'm not going to dissect every single thing said in these books, but I still want to talk about the publicly available Persona 1 guidebooks out there. Starting with the one we know about already, the Persona World book, the one from the digital collection. There isn't a full translation of this one, but the pages are still available to download online, which I did, and wow, look at these cool things that I can't read. At least there's this cool cosplay section you can look at. Apparently the interviews with the devs were translated before, but I can't really see him anymore. Next is the Persona official guidebook, which I looked this up and found literally nothing. The date of when this book was made isn't even public knowledge. It's like an anomaly that nobody knows about. There is a dev interview that was translated by Turquoise Hammer that happens to have the coolest picture ever taken in it, but other than that, there isn't really any info about this guidebook online. You know what does have info though? The Megami Ibunroku Persona Club book. It's a huge book full of art of the characters and demons from the game. A lot of it is fan art, which is actually pretty nice. I mean, Atlus still promotes fan art and stuff even today, but making multiple books that promote fan art and cosplays and stuff is a really cool thing to do. Too bad most of it is in Japanese, so that's all I can really say about it. There's a lot of maps and trivia looking things near the end of the book, but I literally have zero clue what they actually are. There's an ongoing fan translation by the Tumblr user Delem Clouds, but it unfortunately hasn't gotten past the fan art section just yet, at least at the time of me writing this. Still, I think it's worth checking out, if only just to see the art itself. Some of it's insane though, I can't even lie. Revelations Persona no Subete. This guidebook seems like a bit of a mishmash of all the ones I've talked about so far. It has a big section for all the character profiles, some story details, and even some maps of different locations from the game. Unfortunately, this book has like no scans available online. There's only the character profiles and none of them are translated. I found a few images on an eBay listing that weren't in the scans, but there wasn't much info I could gain from them alone. Also, no, I'm not spending 20 bucks on a book that I literally can't read. The Persona Official Perfect Guide. I'm not gonna lie to you, I literally have no clue to find any more info about this one. The only thing I found was a screenshot of an interview with the game's composer, Shoji Meguro, on the Persona 1 Scans Tumblr page. If anyone knows anything about this book, please let me know. Last but not least, the Persona World Guide. This book is a huge world guide to the world of both Persona 1 and Persona 2. I feel like I don't have to explain this, but it's just a big book that describes everything about Persona 1 and 2's world, lore, and demons. There's a translation of the book on Tumblr by Gabrielio, the same person who translated the Shadow Maze novel. It's not finished, but it has a big chunk of the Demon Encyclopedia done, and a little bit of stuff from the rest of the book. I'm not sure if it's gonna be fully translated anytime soon, but either way, at least we have a few things available in English. That should be all for the official books. Hi, editing me here. Okay, so while I was looking some stuff up for this section of the video, I actually found two, I guess 1.5 more guidebooks. So the first one I want to mention is Megami Ibunroku Persona Official Step-by-Step Guide by Famitsu. Or like Aspect Novels, I don't know, it says both of them for some reason. It was released on October 4th, 1996, and it's basically the same thing as every other guidebook, I'm not gonna lie. The next book is the Persona Tribute Illustrations book. It was released on August 5th, 2002 by the company Kobunsha. It's like a big fan art book, which is like really cool and stuff, but the reason I say it's like a half book is because it is based on Persona 1 and Persona 2, so technically it's not like exclusively a Persona 1 novel or anything. But before we continue, I do want to show my live reaction to seeing this book, so here you go. What the fuck? There's a lot of fan comics and anthologies and stuff, but I mainly focus on the official Atlus approved things. If you're interested in seeing them though, there will be a link for them in the description along with all the other 500 links I have there. Now it's time for probably the most out of left field section in this entire video. What could it possibly be, right? Well, it's gonna sound crazy, but hear me out. CD dramas. Yeah, I know, right? What the hell? For some reason, Persona 1 has multiple CD dramas. I say multiple, but it's just like 2. Shortly after the release of Megami Ibunroku Persona on the PS1, there was an official CD drama of the game named the Megami Ibunroku Persona CD Drama Duo. If you don't know what a CD drama is, it's basically like an anime but with no visuals. There's like music and stuff too, there's just no visuals on the screen. I guess it's kind of like a podcast too, maybe? Like a story-driven anime podcast. The drama follows the SEBEC story of Persona 1, and it's split into 2 parts, hence the word duo in the title. Both parts are just over an hour long, so together it's about a 2-hour experience. There's nothing really to say about the story because it's literally the same thing as the game and the manga, but there is something to say about the cast. The voice cast is kind of stacked in this drama. There's a video of the drama that's available on YouTube with English subtitles on it, so if you want to listen to it, I'll leave a link for it in the description too. Everything's in the description, okay? There's also a CD drama that was made for the PSP release of Persona 1 that came out in 2009. I couldn't really find anything out about it other than the fact that it apparently had a prequel with Maki in it. I'm not sure if this is true, but the first part of the drama is available online. It's not translated, but it's there, I guess. this. Despite there only being 2 CD dramas, I find it pretty interesting that there were any CD dramas at all. Like Megami Ibunroku Persona was a side project spin-off that was completely disconnected from Atlus's main series at the time. So I didn't think they would put so much effort and resources into creating something as like outlandish as a CD drama, but hey, here we are. And that was all the Persona 1 related media that I could find while researching for this video. This took a lot of time with me, looking through a bunch of old forums and dead Tumblr pages and stuff, but I really did enjoy like all the sifting for info. I feel like there's something so interesting about how scattered all the information was. It kind of felt like I was searching through old forgotten archives or something. Well, I literally was, but I meant more like an Indiana Jones type of thing. I know I didn't dissect every little thing about every subject today, but that's not really the point of the video. Going super in depth with every single thing I talked about today would make the video like 20 times longer, and I really don't see a need in doing that. Plus, a huge chunk of the links related to most of the stuff I talked about today aren't even available anymore, so I couldn't share more about them even if I wanted to. If you're interested in anything that I talked about today and want to know more, go research them. I implore you to go research them. I mainly use the Megami Tensei wikis, both of them, and the Be Your True Mind Persona 1 fan site for all of my info, so you can start there. I also looked at some of the smaller sites too, like the Persona 1 scans page, and a lot of Reddit posts. The links for most of those things are going to be in the description, so give that a little looky. While you're at it, hit that little like button for me too. But for today, that's all the time I've got. I've got to get back to playing Animal Crossing New Leaf on my Nintendo 3DS.